What if I told you that the life you've been dreaming of, the peace, the love, the fulfillment, the freedom, is already yours right now? Not in some distant future, not after you finally land that job, not when you meet the perfect person, not once you've healed everything, earned everything, or proven anything, but in this moment, exactly as you are, exactly where you are. It sounds impossible, right? Or maybe even a little insulting. But stay with me, because the only thing separating you from that truth is the one thing no one ever taught us how to challenge: perception. We spend so much of our lives chasing more success, deeper love, higher purpose, and beneath it all is this quiet belief: this isn't it yet. There's always something else to get to, somewhere else to be. We measure our current experience against a projected ideal, a version of life that feels just out of reach. We say things like, once I have this, then I'll be happy, or when I finally get there, I'll feel like I've made it. And so we live in a suspended state of almost. Almost enough, almost ready, almost free. The days blur into one another, not because life is boring, but because we're never really inside of them. We're always mentally leaning forward, into the future, into the next chapter, the next win, the next validation. We assume that someday the dream will click into place. But what if the dream was never about arriving somewhere else? What if it's about waking up where you are? This isn't some motivational fantasy or spiritual bypassing. This is about awareness, raw, honest, transformative awareness. The kind that doesn't just make you feel better temporarily, but permanently changes the way you see everything. The truth is, most of us are living the life we once begged the universe for. We're surrounded by things, people, and moments that our past selves longed for, and yet we don't see them. Not fully. We've normalized miracles. We've made the extraordinary seem routine. And that's not because we're ungrateful or lazy. It's because we've been conditioned to look ahead, not within. Conditioned to measure life by what's missing, instead of what's manifesting right in front of us. And so we miss it. The joy, the beauty, the alignment. Not because it isn't there, but because we don't recognize it when it is. Pause for a moment and think, who were you 5 years ago? What were you desperate for? What did you dream about at night? More peace? More self-confidence? A space of your own? A relationship that felt safe? A sense of meaning or direction? And look at yourself now. Maybe not every detail has landed yet. Maybe you're still stretching toward more. That's okay, but look closely. Aren't you standing in at least some of the things you used to only wish for? The way your life feels now? The way your mornings begin, the people around you, the choices you can make? Would they have felt impossible to that version of you? We're so focused on the final form of our dream reality that we often fail to realize we're already walking through the first, second, or even third stage of it. The dream doesn't always arrive in a flash of perfection. Sometimes it shows up quietly, like a sunrise you almost missed because your back was turned. There is a hidden doorway in perception, a subtle shift that changes everything without anything having to change at all. And once you learn how to look through that doorway, you begin to realize something extraordinary. You're not separate from the life you want. You're simply out of sync with its frequency. And that frequency isn't waiting for you at the top of a mountain or in some far-off version of yourself. It's here now, layered into the present moment, waiting to be seen, felt, and finally understood. So let's explore this together. Let's break down why you don't see it, what has been blocking that awareness, and how to shift your energy and perspective so deeply that your entire life begins to feel different, not later, but right now. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us aren't suffering because life is cruel or because we haven't manifested enough yet. We're suffering because we've been trained to see lack. We've been raised inside a lens that constantly filters for what's missing, what's broken, what's next. And so even when life offers us something beautiful, something aligned, something deeply true, we gloss over it because it doesn't fit the fantasy version we've imagined. We're not wired to recognize peace as success. We're not taught to value the quiet mornings, the slow healing, the simple joys. Instead, we're conditioned to chase milestones, outcomes, and visible validation. And that's where the internal conflict starts. Life is happening in the now, but we're living in the someday. There's a painful mismatch between where we are and where we think we should be. And that gap, that persistent ache of not there yet, becomes the backdrop of our emotional experience. We walk around believing we're behind, unfulfilled, or stuck, when in reality we're simply out of alignment with what's already working. Our senses are dulled by expectation. We expect things to look more glamorous, to feel more intense, to arrive more dramatically. So when peace comes dressed as an ordinary moment, we ignore it. When freedom comes disguised as responsibility, we resent it. And when the dream shows up without fireworks, we assume it's not real. But the problem isn't the dream. It's our perception of what the dream is supposed to feel like. Comparison only deepens this conflict. We scroll through carefully curated lives on social media, where everyone else seems to be further ahead, happier, richer, more enlightened. We see the highlight reel and forget it's not the whole movie. And suddenly our own lives, rich with nuance and quiet beauty, feel underwhelming. We convince ourselves we're missing something, that the real dream is still out there, somewhere we haven't reached yet. So we start future tripping. We build castles in the air, imagining the moment when everything finally aligns. And as we mentally live in a version of life that doesn't exist yet, we emotionally disconnect from the life that does. We're homesick for a future we've invented and blind to the miracles around us. But here's the twist. Everything you want is already in motion. Not metaphorically and literally. The relationships you've cultivated, the growth you've done, the self-awareness you've gained, the strength you've built through hard seasons, they're not placeholders. They are the dream, unfolding in real time. But your ability to feel them, to be nourished by them, depends entirely on your ability to see them. And most people never learn how to do that. They wait for the reality to change, instead of changing the way they relate to it. We've all been taught to believe that happiness is something we earn after completing a checklist. But what if happiness is something we activate through awareness? What if the reason you can't feel the dream is because you've attached it to outcomes instead of states of being? You think the dream is the beach house, the perfect partner, the six-figure income. But the truth is, what you really want is a feeling: safety, joy, connection, purpose, love. And here's the mind-bending part. Those feelings are already available. Not in full-blown intensity every moment, but in quiet, repeated pulses that show up throughout your day. You just miss them because they don't come with fanfare. They come in silence, in stillness, in moments we've been trained to overlook. This is the conflict we rarely talk about. Not a lack of manifestation, but a lack of recognition. Not a delay in our dreams, but a delay in our perception. And unless we shift the way we see, we'll keep chasing shadows and ignoring the light we're already standing in. So how do we shift? How do we train ourselves to see the life we're already inside of? How do we awaken to the dream without needing it to change form? That's where we go next. Into the quantum of attention, the science of consciousness, and the subtle rewiring that allows us to finally see clearly. To understand how we start seeing the dream reality we're already living, we have to step out of the realm of simple motivation and into the deeper mechanics of how consciousness works. At the quantum level, reality is not a fixed object waiting to be discovered. It's a field of infinite possibilities, constantly shifting in response to observation. That means your focus doesn't just interpret your world. It creates the experience of it. Attention collapses probability into perception. When you tune your awareness to lack, you live in a lack-based reality. When you attune it to gratitude, to joy, to flow, those frequencies become your dominant lens. You begin to collapse a different version of your world into being. Not because the outer world suddenly changes, but because your internal resonance reorganizes your relationship to it. This is not metaphysical fluff. It's energy physics. You are a frequency receiver and projector, living in a field that mirrors your signal. And the clearest signal you can emit is presence. Let's go deeper. Your brain is constantly filtering information through the reticular activating system, a network of neurons in your brainstem that acts like a gatekeeper for what you notice. This system doesn't show you what's true, it shows you what's relevant, based on what you've told it is important through repetition and emotion. If you constantly focus on failure, your RAS filters for evidence of failure. If you constantly rehearse the feeling of being behind, your brain will spotlight every reason why you're not enough. But here's the powerful part. This system can be trained. You can teach your brain to filter for beauty, for growth, for subtle wins, for evidence that you are in alignment. And when you do, your entire lived experience begins to feel different. Not because the world changed, but because your witnessing did. But here's where it gets tricky. Even once you know this, there's still resistance. Why? Because identity is sticky. We don't just have perceptions, we identify with them. If your core self-concept is, "I'm always the one who's behind," then noticing alignment feels threatening. It challenges your identity. If you've spent years believing life is hard and joy is rare, then peace can actually feel unsafe. You unconsciously reject the evidence that contradicts your story. This is the inner conflict that keeps people stuck. They say they want a dream life, but their subconscious is addicted to being the underdog, the struggler, the one who hasn't made it yet. Why? Because that role has given them purpose, attention, even love. Shedding it means facing the unknown self, the version of you who is at peace, who does feel enough. And that's a massive shift in identity. But it's the shift that opens the door. To step into the awareness that you're already living part of your dream reality, you have to make peace with being content. And for many people, that's terrifying. Contentment feels like giving up, like losing ambition, but it's the opposite. Contentment isn't the end of the road. It's the frequency that brings the road to you. It's what signals to the universe that you are aligned with the vibration of having, not wanting. And that energetic shift ripples outward. You begin to attract more of what you're already tuned into. Not by force, not by desperate affirmations, but by embodiment. The moment you start acting like your dream is already alive within you, because it is, you stop seeking and start seeing. So here's the real work. Notice. Not with a checklist, not with pressure, but with openness. Can you walk through your life today and find 3 things you once wished for? Can you feel into the version of you who would be amazed by what you now call normal? Can you remember that alignment is less about control and more about clarity? The energy of the dream isn't hidden, so it's here, waiting for you to soften enough to receive it. This isn't about pretending life is perfect. It's about realizing life doesn't need to be perfect to be miraculous. And the sooner you make that energetic switch, from seeker to seer, the more your reality will begin to reveal its hidden magic. Here's the moment everything flips. The dream you're waiting for isn't out there in the distance. It's not months or years away. It's not hiding behind a breakthrough or buried under layers of shadow work. It's not being held hostage by the universe until you finally prove yourself worthy. It's already here. Not just spiritually, not just metaphorically, literally, so right now in the reality you're standing in. The only reason you don't feel it is because you've been taught to search with your eyes closed. You've been taught that the dream will look a certain way. So when it shows up dressed as your actual life, subtle, soft, and strangely familiar, you walk right past it. The paradigm shift is simple but radical. Stop chasing, start witnessing. Stop reaching, start receiving. The future version of you that you think will finally feel the dream, that version isn't real. It's an idea, a mental projection, and ironically, it's the very idea that's pulling you away from your actual experience. The dream doesn't arrive on a timeline. It arrives through alignment. And alignment is never in the future. It's always a function of the now. When you align your perception with your presence, you experience the feeling you were chasing before any external condition changes. That's the breakthrough. You stop needing reality to prove itself, and you begin to see reality as the proof. Think about it. Every dream you've ever had was never about a thing. It was about a feeling. You didn't want the car. You wanted the freedom. You didn't want the lover. You wanted to feel safe and seen. You didn't want the success. You wanted to feel powerful and enough. Those states are not tied to objects. They are frequencies. And frequencies aren't earned. They're tuned into. You can access them now. You can embody them now. Not because you've reached some mystical peak, but because they've always been here, coded into your emotional system, waiting for you to reclaim them. This is the point where everything begins to shift, not outside of you, but within your awareness. You realize that life hasn't been withholding your dream. It's been whispering it through quiet moments, in the laughter of someone you love, in the stillness of a morning without chaos, in the breath that comes easier now than it used to. You just didn't know that was it, because no one told you that the dream doesn't always scream. Sometimes it's a whisper. Sometimes it's a familiar moment you've experienced 100 times, but this time you're finally awake enough to feel it. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that reflects only what you believe. If you believe the dream is missing, the reflection will show you lack. If you believe it's already here, the reflection changes instantly. That mirror is life. It doesn't show you what's real. It shows you what you're ready to see. And when you stop projecting absence, you start noticing presence. When you stop gripping the fantasy, you start holding the real. The dream becomes less of a place you're going and more of a lens you're looking through. Nothing needs to shift except your seeing. You are not on the way to your dream life. You're inside of it. And the moment you let go of the belief that it needs to look a certain way is the moment you actually begin to live it. So what changes now? First, you stop identifying with the version of yourself who's still waiting to arrive. You release the old identity of the struggler, the seeker, the one who's always behind. Not because life is now perfect, but because you finally realize perfection isn't the point. Presence is. You begin to understand that the endless push for more was never the problem. The problem was thinking you couldn't feel peace until you had it all figured out. Now you can breathe deeply, because there's nothing left to prove. There's nowhere else you have to be to begin feeling what you were always after. This is where clarity blooms. The chasing mind slows, the anxious pressure eases, and something new rises in its place, quiet knowing. You start waking up and recognizing how much is already working. How many of your former goals are now just part of your everyday? How much you've actually grown, evolved, softened, and healed. That doesn't mean you stop dreaming, but you stop postponing your life in the name of your dreams. You no longer use the future as a reason to withhold joy from the present. You start living with your vision instead of in the shadow of it. And that changes everything. What once felt like waiting becomes witnessing. What once felt like a gap becomes grace. You realize that your energy was never meant to be spent in pursuit, but in expression. You aren't here to conquer reality. You're here to co-create with it, moment by moment, breath by breath. And that creation becomes effortless when you stop resisting what already is. When you allow your life to be enough. When you finally say to yourself, I see it now. I feel it now. I'm not chasing my dream, I'm living it. From that state, things begin to move. Not because you force them, but because you're no longer blocking the flow with doubt. You take action, yes, but the action is aligned. The intention is clean. You're no longer trying to escape where you are. You're expanding from it. And that's a totally different energetic reality. You're no longer in survival mode. You're in creative mode. The life you've been trying to reach stops being a finish line and starts being a frequency. One that you now know how to tune into, again and again, without needing anything to change. The outer world may still shift in cycles. There may still be challenges, but you're no longer shaken by them because you're rooted in the knowing that your dream isn't fragile. It's not a single event. It's a state of being that's already yours, and it can meet you in every moment you're willing to receive it. Take a moment, really, right now, and look around you. Not just with your eyes, but with your heart. What are you sitting inside of that used to be a wish, a prayer, a distant possibility? What has become so normal to you that you've forgotten to honor its arrival? These aren't just rhetorical questions, they're doorways. Doorways into awareness, because the dream isn't some grand finale waiting to descend from the heavens. It's this breath, this quiet, this choice to see with new eyes. The shift from absence to presence isn't dramatic. It's gentle, but it's also powerful enough to change the texture of your entire life. There is a spiritual law that often goes unspoken in modern manifestation culture. The universe doesn't respond to your timeline. It responds to your tone. The frequency you carry, the vibration of how you feel now, is what shapes the reality you meet. So if you want a life that feels like your dream, start carrying the tone of the dream within you. That means moving from gratitude, not for what you hope to have, but for what you already hold. It means letting love lead your perception. It means remembering that alignment isn't a future prize, it's a present choice. Over and over, moment by moment, you tune your awareness back into the frequency of what's already here. And when you do that, life softens. Not because all problems vanish, but because you stop amplifying them with resistance. You start realizing how much beauty is layered into the ordinary. You start recognizing yourself, not as someone who's behind, but as someone who's arriving constantly, in deeper ways. You begin to embody the truth that nothing outside of you has to change for your inner world to shift. And from that shift, miracles become visible. So here's your invitation. Stop asking when it will all begin. Stop chasing the feeling of enough. Instead, pause, breathe, notice, feel. There is something sacred unfolding in your life right now, not later, not someday, and it wants your attention. Not your improvement, not your analysis, just your witnessing. The dream is here. You are in it. Now see it.